Thursday, April 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Stoughton Planning Board. I'd like a motion, please, to open up the meeting.
So made.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Karen, would you note who was here at the beginning of the meeting, please? So we can see how, when the meeting progresses, that people are added and the votes are correct. I do want to notify everybody up front that this meeting is being recorded for rebroadcast on Stoughton Media Access Corporation, and so that you should guide your actions accordingly. There are no chairman's comments this evening. We're going to jump right into item number 2. I need to open up 19 Camden Street. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So made.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kaba. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. The item is now open. Mr. Charbonneau, would you want to inform us as to the status?
Yes, we did receive a request from the applicant's attorney, Paul Schneiders, recently requesting a continuance without testimony to the meeting on May 27th. I believe they have yet to file with the Conservation Commission, and they're still waiting for the results of the title search to come back on the land to determine how they're going to proceed with the abandonment of the paper streets on the property. So they requested continuance without testimony to May 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. Can I have a motion from the board to continue this matter to May 27, 2021, without testimony at 7 o'clock?
Move the board to continue to May 27.
At
Second.
7. Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Please inform the applicant that his request has been approved, Mr. Charbonneau.
Yep.
Okay. You
You
want
want me to give my quick downtown zoning update?
Yes, let's have a motion to open up planner's report on downtown zoning.
So made.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Mr. Charbonneau, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. So there's not a lot to report since the last meeting. We did send the draft bylaw to town council for their review. They did have some comments that came back that were not major changes. So Joe, Dan, myself met with the consultant after those comments came in, and we adopted most of them. They were fairly innocuous and just clarification comments. So there was one other change that was recommended due to feedback from local stakeholders. I know initially we said that we weren't going to have a minimum affordable housing component in the core sub-district. However, after hearing from local stakeholders such as the Housing Fund Subcommittee, we decided to add a provision that within the core district, there would be a requirement for affordable housing. However, it would be stipulated that it would be for senior citizens. It would be senior affordable housing in the core, whereas in the transition and the flex, it doesn't have to be age-restricted senior housing. So we made that minor change and sent it to town council to make sure that the definition we added in for senior housing is appropriate. And that's going to be open for discussion once this is rolled out to the public really soon. So as soon as I hear back from town council, I'm going to begin getting the word out about the public forum. The public forum is going to be held on June 7th. The consultant has a flyer that's prepared. And like I said, once we get comments back from verification back from town council that the minor changes made recently are okay, we'll have all of the relevant materials for the Stoughton Center zoning put on the main town website so everyone can see. So the month of May will be spent getting the word out about the public forum on June 7th. So if you guys could mark that on your calendar, and if you could make it, that would be great. So that'll be the first public forum. And so that's it for an update. We're ready to roll this out to the public within the next week or so.
John, I'm just going to add one point to that. Because there was such a concern about the definition of senior housing, we've preliminarily added the word independent
Correct.
because
Yes.
we didn't want it confused with any other bundle of services that may be, people may be thinking have to be provided at this facility.
Right. We want to differentiate between this and assisted living, or a nursing home facility, and also the age we chose to be the dividing line for this particular type of housing is 62 years of age, because the feeling is that 55 and over, a lot of people at 55, most people are still working in their professions, and so they're not really living the same lifestyle as people who are a little bit older and potentially retired or semi-retired. So we decided that we want to differentiate this, as Joe said, between over 55 but not assisted living. We wanted to hit that group that is not necessarily in the workforce full time anymore, but they aren't at the point where they need on-site services.
Thank you. 7:10. I don't know if we want to start the minutes at this point or not, but I think we may just hang for 5. Just checking to see. I don't think there's anything else we can start. Okay, there's Dan. Okay.
Sorry about that, gentlemen.
Okay. Dan, we've already, just so you understand, there was no chairman's comments. We've continued the 19 Camden Street project at the request of the applicant. John has given his update on the downtown rezoning, and we're ready to hear the 200 Schumann project. So with that, I'm going to, just so you know, Dan, Jonathan is not with us this evening, and we're going to lose Mr. Kaba for about 15 minutes or so at 7:30. So we're going to have to kind of jiggle this a little bit to make this evening's proceedings work, just so you know who's here and why they're not here. With that, I'll entertain a motion to open up 200 Schumann Drive.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Kaba. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Okay, this is a continued public hearing on the application of TSC Schumann 200 LLC, 175 Paramount Drive, Raynham, Mass. 02767, and the owners of TSC Schumann 200 LLC, 175 Paramount Drive, Raynham, Mass. 02767, and Jeffrey Crane, 2670 South Banning Street, Gilbert, Arizona, 85295, represented by attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, for waivers by special permit under section 6.1.9 to allow waivers from 6.1.6, table of off-street parking requirements, and section 6.1.7, parking and loading space standards, and in addition for site plan approval under 10.6 of the Stoughton zoning bylaws for the construction of an 81,000 square foot addition to the existing manufacturing / warehouse building. The property located at 200 Schumann Avenue, further identified in Assessor's Plan number 88, Lot 142 and Map 89, Lot 142, and located in the industrial and residential BRB zoning districts. Will the applicant and/or his representative come forward and identify yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street. The other members of our project team are here this evening as well. And in the interest of time, because of the board's tight schedule tonight, I'll be very brief in my opening remarks. If you recall, we were before you 2 weeks ago. At that time, I think the remaining issue that came up that evening was the issue of the appropriate type of screening for the roof to block the HVAC equipment to be installed on the roof. So Mr. Dennis Swart, who is our project architect, submitted a revised site plan to the board, a building elevation plan to the board last week to show that screening. That's the plan that you see up on the screen that Mr. Charbonneau is sharing with the board. So that, I believe, Mr. Chairman, was the remaining item that the board had asked us to address. You can see that screening goes from the back of the property along that western side of the building, along both angles. It then comes across the front along two separate sections of the front of the building. So we're confident that this screening feature will effectively screen all of the HVAC equipment on the roof from anybody either coming down Schuman Ave or any of the residential abutters on Corbett Road. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you need, or the board members need any further explanation of what that roof screening consists of. If so, Mr. Swart is here. Our project engineer, Mr. Fabiano, is also here. Yeah, either Mike or Dennis, could elaborate on that if necessary. But I think the plan more or less speaks for itself, Mr. Chairman, unless the members have any questions. Otherwise, we've reviewed the updated draft decision that Mr. Charbonneau was good enough to forward to us yesterday. The project team, specifically the client, TSC Schuman, is satisfied with the language of the draft decision. And we welcome the opportunity for the board to approve that decision tonight.
So, Joe, if I could just jump in, Barry, you're absolutely right. This was the one remaining decision, and so far the feedback I'd gotten leading into this meeting, once the revised plans are submitted, is that this meets what the planning board was looking for as far as the original intent of screening the rooftop utilities. And there is also one remaining item that I will mention as a special condition when we get to the decision, Mr. Chairman, as far as the existing septic system. So that is the only other issue that that needs to be addressed. But again, I can mention that in the special condition that got added to the decision.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. Any member of the board have any questions or any issues with this last additional item?
John, could you just roll that down a little bit further? The plan, it's only a partial shot on the drawing on the snap. There you go. The only question I have would be on the low roof. Is we have it going along one side, does it need to be going along the front, or is that RTU going to be visible from any location in that area? Actually,
I believe what was requested after the site visit, Dan, if my memory serves, is that it was important to screen the utilities from the south and the west viewpoints, and so that's what the applicant has done. The feeling is that the rooftop utilities wouldn't be seen by any abutters or anybody. It was basically entering the site and the abutters to the west of the site. So those two vantage points were the areas where we felt that they needed screening. The other angles we felt it was not necessary.
okay, just that question. Thank you.
You say so, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to make sure. Anybody else?
Nope, no questions.
Okay, with that, I think what we're going to do is ask Mr. Charbonneau to put the decision up. We'll go through the decision and then take the final votes at once and close the public hearing.
Okay, are we all set, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. So the first page, this has been like Attorney Crimmins mentioned, this has been through a couple rounds of review um, by the applicant and their representatives. It's also been reviewed, uh, internally to make sure that the information is accurate and that all mentioned conditions of approval are included. So the applicant was kind enough to update some of the numbers to make them 100% accurate. So simply a summary of the project, what is being sought in terms of approvals, procedural history in terms of the filing of the application and the public hearings to be brought up to date with tonight's date, the various application submittals and other related documents.
Whoa, stop. Scroll down, John. The last revision is 412.
Okay. Where's that, Joe?
It's on the last,
So there you go.
Bottom of page 1, John, 2B.
Yep.
appended.
There you go. Okay. And also right here.
Yep, that's,
Okay. Thank you. Other related documents that have been received throughout the process. Actually, before this gets signed, I will add the email that came in from Larry Perry, the sanitarian, that sparked the last special condition. So I'll add that in as item number 9. So that will be an additional related document. The various typical findings related to site plan approval special permits. The 4 waivers that are being sought. Now we get into the general conditions, which are pretty boilerplate. The decision expires within 2 years, if unless substantial construction has commenced. That is usually not a problem. The requirements for a revised full set of approved plans. This is standard PDF copies. Any modifications have to come back before the board. Filing with the Registry of Deeds and proof of recording. The applicant shall hold a pre-construction meeting with engineering department to coordinate any necessary inspections. All applicable zoning bylaws. Inspection fees, outside testing. Now we get into special conditions. All required easements shall be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Proof of recording shall be provided to the planning board, if applicable. The planning board, as usual, requires cash surety to cover the full replacement cost of all landscaping prior to the issuance of any CO. Cash will be held for 1 complete growing season after landscaping is installed to ensure survival. National Grid approval for work within their easement shall be obtained, and the approval document shall be provided to the planning board and the engineering department prior to the issuance of any building permit. Here are standard hours of construction and operation during construction. No machinery shall be started or run prior to these start times, and there shall be no construction activities on Sunday or on any state or federal holiday. Reference to the Conservation Commission's order of conditions. NIPD's construction general permit and an SWPPP shall be submitted to the engineering department prior to the issuance of any building permit.
John, on number 11,
Yep.
can we add to that and the Mass DOT?
I wasn't aware Mass DOT needed was involved in blasting permits.
Yeah, I think because there's a gas pipe nearby, Mr. Fabiano, do you want to chime in on that? Have you explored that?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's only the Stoughton Fire Department that has purview over blasting. And if they believe that it needs to go to another agency, I believe it goes through the Stoughton Fire Department. I
Right.
don't believe Mass DOT is part of the process, but I'm not
I
one
think
hundred percent positive.
because you're
This is-
near a highway. It's not the
Well-
gas, pump, it's the highway. Because
Well-
they're probably gonna have to close the highway.
Well, wait a sec, Joe. How close are they to the highway here?
We're not abutting
No,
the
they're
highway.
not that
Yeah.
close to the highway, I didn't think.
Yeah, it's probably about 3-4 miles away.
No,
Yeah, so
Uh,
I've never been aware of anyone other than a local fire department being
okay, that's
approving
fine.
blasting
Just
permits,
make-
Joe. So I think they'll be okay.
Okay,
The applicant shall install security cameras on the property in coordination with the police department to ensure sufficient coverage of the property. The applicant agrees to resurface their access egress drive to the cul-de-sac located on Schuman Avenue to the satisfaction of the engineering department. The running or idling of any vehicles with diesel engines is prohibited outside of the hours listed above following construction in perpetuity. All annual maintenance records of stormwater facilities shall be submitted to the engineering department in accordance with the approved O&M plan. They've already taken care of this, but it's in there anyway. Any new rooftop utilities to be installed of the proposed addition will be screened from view from the south and west viewpoints to the satisfaction of the planning board. Joe, is it okay to take that out of there now that they've shown it?
no, I think it's fine because that's why it's answered by the diagram itself. They're gonna have to construct it.
Okay.
So,
The applicant agrees to connect the building to the municipal sewer system when the town engineer determines that the municipal sewer system is constructed and operational along Schuman Avenue. And this is the last special condition in response to the email that was received from the Board of Health. Should there be an alarm event with the existing septic system, a licensed septic pumper who offers 24/7 emergency pump out service shall be contacted immediately. Specific number to be posted at the alarm panel for an emergency pump out of the existing septic tank, which is near the existing building. This would then give time for the project engineer to be contacted to determine the extent of the issue, as well as for the Board of Health to be contacted to determine if something additional needs to be done at that time. Both of these numbers should also be posted at the alarm panel and or readily available accessible to the building manager and or facility maintenance manager. So that will, in the meantime, while they're still operating on the current septic system until they hook up to town sewer, this will protect the applicant and the surrounding neighborhood and the town in case there's a failing with the existing sewer system or an incident. So this is an insurance measure until they hook up to the town sewer system.
is there anything else that the board,
And that's it. That's just the record of vote.
right,
And
just wanna make sure
actually,
nobody. Comments?
yeah, April 26th would be the day, Joe. Joe and I have discussed getting together on Monday to sign the approved decision. So that's it.
Anybody else on the board have any questions or issues before we proceed with the approvals? Hearing none. First of all, a motion to approve Mr. Mullen from the public.
Yes, I had a question, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Still a public hearing, isn't it?
Yes, we haven't closed the public hearing yet.
So before you vote on this, does the public, can we ask a couple of questions?
I asked for anybody that had any questions, but yes, you can.
I appreciate it. Through you, Mr. Chairman. I'm kind of late to the meeting a little bit, but can Mr. Charbonneau just roll back that, those approvals or those waivers, I guess? It went kind of fast for me. I appreciate that. I saw something about blasting too.
No, that's in the special conditions.
Yeah, with the blasting, is the neighborhood, like they're not too far from Corbett Road, is neighbors gonna be notified when the blasting is gonna occur?
That would, yep, I'll let Mr. Charbonneau answer that, but
Well, I don't know that intimately, Joe. That would be through the fire department, so I don't know the details of who gets notified when blasting takes place.
If,
Well, I think that's paramount to the neighbors.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, because I actually had this at my own house, the fire department notifies the abutters because they have, they give them plenty of notice of when it's going to occur, and they are on site when it occurs as well.
Could that be written in the requirements here?
It is.
Well,
Through
that's
you,
actually
Mr.
part of the
Chairman,
permitting process through the, we don't need to, I don't believe it's necessary to list the steps that the fire department goes through. I think it suffices that they have to go through the fire department, and their permitting process is their permitting process. We don't normally get into that level of detail with another department's permitting process in our decision.
Okay. Another question I just had, is there going to be hazardous materials created or stored here on site?
No.
Can anybody answer that?
No,
Through you,
Barry's shaking his head
yeah.
no.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to previous speaker, no.
that's been asked and answered from Mr. Mullins at the first hearing in this project.
Okay, I wasn't at the first hearing. Sorry. Apologize for that. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for letting me ask a couple questions. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr. Mullins. Mr. Zamanian, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to express my gratitude to the planning board, the town planner, and the applicant for addressing my concerns that I had about the septic system and how that was being handled before we hooked up. I truly appreciate your attention to that from all the parties. So thank you.
You're welcome.
In case I've missed anybody else, is that it before we can't ask for a vote because we've lost Mr. Cabez back? Okay, thank you. With that, anything else from the board or the public? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the decision and approving the chairman to sign on behalf of the planning board? Can I have a motion to that effect?
I make a motion to approve the decision and to allow the chair to sign on behalf of the board, on behalf of the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Roll call vote on that. Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Now, with respect to the closing of the public hearing, I need a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
Motion to
Motion to-
close hearing.
Thank
Second.
you, thank you, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Demuse. Roll call vote, Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Now, I want Mr.
Great, Mr. Chair.
read on the approvals requested, let's read the waivers and we'll vote on them as a group. Would you read through them, Mr.
Hold on, let me pull it back up.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are they not incorporated into the
Yeah,
decision?
they usually are. They're incorporated as part of the
That's-
approval and decision.
I think that's why they're listed.
Just for the record, I want to make sure that everybody understands. I'm just going to go through them. We're only talking about a couple of minutes, Mr.
Okay.
Why? I'm just a little confused because the entire decision's already been approved. So
Because the decision incorporates both the site plan approval and the special permits.
right.
I'll agree with Attorney Crimmins.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I think that's it, gentlemen.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. On behalf of the client and our entire project team, we appreciate your cooperation.
So
Right.
Barry, I'll get
Yeah.
together with Joe on Monday. Michael and Barry, I'll get together with them on Monday. File it with the town clerk, and that'll start the 20-day appeal period. It'll start the next day on the 27th. So count 20 days out from that, and then the day after that, as you know, Barry, you can
Yep.
pick up your plan, get it recorded, and go for any permits you need.
Yeah, great. John, if you don't mind, if you could just forward a copy of the decision to me after Joe has signed it, that would
I
be
will.
great. Okay,
I will.
great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good
We
evening.
Thank you,
appreciate
everybody.
all your help. Yep.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
All right, have a nice
Good luck.
evening.
Okay, I need a motion to open up deliberation regarding the citizens petition on 600 Pleasant Street.
So
Please.
moved.
Second, please.
Second,
Thank you. This is Mr. Roll call vote. Mr. Kaba,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse,
yes.
chair votes yes. Mr. Charbonneau, do you want to put that up on the screen, please?
Yeah, I just found it, so let me just pull that up and then share it.
Just to refresh everybody's recollection.
Okay, my computer's being
As
very
John-
slow.
As John is doing that, we're required by statute to take a formal vote to recommend, not recommend this citizens petition zoning article for town meeting. It bears on the ability in the future, as well as town meeting always asks what the recommendation of the planning board is. Just to remind the members of the board that if the planning board votes negative and the town meeting rejects the bylaw, that under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, it cannot appear in a subsequent town meeting for 2 years.
Mr. Chairperson, Mr. Chair, can I just make a statement to the planning board before we start?
Sure.
After the public hearing was held on this and the response that was received from the public regarding this zoning change and the non-favorable response we got from the neighborhood, I did reach out once again to the applicant and Mr. Waluka and offered to act as a liaison to hold meetings between the property owner and the neighborhood to withdraw this article and to work on an article that would be more favorable to the neighborhood. And I heard nothing. So they've again turned down the opportunity to have me act as a liaison between them and the neighborhood on a bylaw that would be received more favorably.
I wanted to summarize, and Mr. Charbonneau chime in when you feel you have something to add to, just to summarize some of the comments that have been made about the project. This was to be set up as, it's a 3-lot subdivision. As I remember during the presentation, the applicant wanted to put this senior housing on one of those 3 lots, with the other lot being a construction office / stockyard and a storage facility. Is that your understanding, Mr. Charbonneau?
Yes, and from a planning perspective, having attended both of the neighborhood working sessions and the public hearing, and having been involved with this for since the inception, having listened to all 3 presentations and all the comments back from the neighborhood, and just making notes of my own, simply from a planning perspective, there are obviously pros and cons to this development. Obviously tax revenue is one of the pros, but there are just as many concerns, and just some of the information I heard from the property owner and his representative over the 3 meetings that seemed to contradict themselves at some point made me a little bit uneasy. For instance, the hybrid office and storage spaces that were shown as part of the project are listed on the plan as professional offices, but they're not really going to be professional offices. They're going to be a small office in the front and it's going to be an overhead door with warehouse storage for a plumber, an electrician, a general contractor. So those two uses are very different traffic generation, very different hours of operation, and this district is being named as a senior housing district, but it was made clear at the public hearing that this is not senior housing. In fact, the applicant's representative made a clear point that this is not senior housing. So how can a district be named senior housing when it's not senior housing? Um, the other thing that made me a little bit nervous, and I thought one of the potential positives of the project was that this zoning was being set up for this property and this property only, and would not necessarily be able to be replicated in other parts of town, because that's always a little bit of a red flag when a property owner wants to do something a little bit out of the box. But Mr. Waluka made it very clear that this could potentially be a precedent-setting zoning change, and I think that there's some uneasiness that comes along with that, because it's not a slam dunk that the town is supportive of this zoning change, and there's already discussion about doing it elsewhere in town. So there's certain aspects of this that that seem to be, I know it's a general business district, but it's also being presented as a rezoning, but it's really an overlay district, because the language of the bylaw clearly states that they're trying to maintain all the allowed uses in the underlying zoning district, which is general business. So that's another thing where it's presented as a rezoning, but it doesn't read as a rezoning. It reads as an overlay district, and that's that. As from a planning perspective, that makes me a little bit uneasy. And in terms of the impact on the neighborhood, and Mr. Scardino, you brought it up at the public hearing about the minimum lot size. It seems like the minimum lot size is established where it gives the impression that there may be more development proposed on this site, even if this bylaw were to be approved at town meeting. And so it seems like they're trying to keep it open-ended. And again, when you're going for such a sensitive rezoning, that's a tough thing. So anyway, those are my comments. Those are my concerns from a planning perspective, strictly from a planning perspective. So thank you for letting me make my comments, Joe.
You're welcome. Mr. Kelly has his hand up.
John, I respectfully disagree on a couple of points you made, and just so that we understand, I believe that there were specific things surrounding what they were considering senior housing. This is considered senior housing. It says right in it that's for 55 and older. However, it is not an assisted senior housing living, and I think that's where the discrepancy was. It is still considered senior housing. So let's try to keep it in line with what they are presenting. That's what they're presenting. Second off, as far as it being a zoning, my understanding from the presentation was they were trying to present a zoning article with parameters that would fit this site, but also be large enough that they were trying not to replicate it going further down the line. And I think they were setting parameters with the size of the square of the lot that it couldn't be readily duplicated throughout town, because knowing that once you set a bylaw in town that it could possibly be replicated. So I think from their point of view, when they were talking, that was the take I had on that particular item. And again, this is just my interpretation and my memory of what they actually set forward as far as what they were trying to do with this particular bylaw. I know that there was a lot of discussion around how many units per square foot or per acre, but the number was actually down when you actually looked at how many units they had and what they were doing on a per acre basis within the site. So on those couple of points, I just want to make sure we're clear that it wasn't, I don't believe from what I saw from the applicant, what I read from the information that was in, that this was a negative on all those points. I think they were trying to work with the town. That being said, it was clear from that meeting that the surrounding neighbors and the surrounding people do not want this project there. Now, this is a general business district, and therefore the owner of that general business district would therefore, if this does not get approved with this type of a zoning in there, we allowed to go forward with a business that would be very similar, John, to what you were saying, would not be compatible in that area. So We got to be careful on what we're doing and what we're allowing and how we're allowing it. The neighbors have to understand at some point in time that this site is going to be built on at some level of being built. What that's going to be at the final outcome, I'm not sure. I mean, that's really up to the owner. However, he has brought forth a proposal that he thought could work as far as trying to be more use of the site, less use of the conservation area. Yes, would it create more traffic? Obviously, it would create more traffic. But how it was going to affect town sewers, town services, those are the types of things that needed to be worked through. So, and I think all of that could have been vetted when the actual project came through. All this was a proposal for a possible zoning article for them to be possibly able to do something. The mitigation of the project would be at the level of the project mitigation. So that's all I wanted to say, but I just wanted to make sure we were understanding about from where my understanding was on the project and the way it was presented.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Cobb?
I would concur or agree with Dan, 60% and 40% in disagreement. In two issues, the issue of density that you raised, that he thought it was not a bigger issue, was a bigger issue. It was not mitigated at all during those discussions. And the second point I'm making is that the neighbors, the abutters, and the public, I don't think it is against the development. It is very risk averse in terms of the services that will be provided there. So those clarifications needed to be made by the developers, and they could come back with a very sound proposal that will become a win-win situation for the area.
And Mr. Cobb, Mr. Charbonneau did mention that after that and after I think that his offer to shepherd a compromise between the butters and the applicant was not, and I believe there was also a reaching out by representative of the butters to meet with Mr. Kelly, and neither one of those offers were taken up by the developer. And number three is that the municipal regs, which is not the neighborhood, voted unanimously to reject this. I wanted the board to understand that. Even in some contentious zoning proposals by others in the past that I've been on the negative side of, have had partial. They ended up getting approved, but it wasn't unanimous. So I wanted the board to know that it's not just the abutters, but the standing committee of town meeting also negatively. So it's not just
Mr. Charbonneau, can you elaborate what do you know the reason they were negative against that project, against the zoning?
Oh, do you mean the standing committees, Dan?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with their reasoning, Dan. I didn't attend those meetings. I attended the neighborhood meetings, so
Gotcha.
I can't speak intelligently in terms of the reasoning that those other committees didn't like the project. So I don't want to speculate on that.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just thought I'd ask the question. That's all.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure, Dan, why they were negative on it. Maybe Mr. Scardino, I know Mark Zemanian's on the call and raised a hand. Maybe he could shed some light on that, but I'm not sure, Dan.
Thank you.
I'll make a slight exception and let Mr. Zemanian pipe in on that issue. Because this is not a public hearing, so. But,
No, understood. Just a couple of quick points of clarification. After the planning board meeting that last heard this, Mr. Kelly did send an email to me asking if I could sit down and work something out with him that would work for the neighborhood. After taking the weekend, I chose to reach out to the town planner, Mr. Charbonneau, and asked him to reach out to Mr. Kelly. I do not represent the neighborhood as a whole, and I did not feel comfortable moving forward with that on my own. And to John's credit, not only did he do that, but he got no response. As far as municipal regulations is concerned, they voted against this for a myriad of reasons, but one of the pointed reasons that a number of the members used was they had watched the planning board meeting and found the neighborhood to be completely and utterly against this. And they, in no way, shape, or form, had a desire to vote against the will of the neighborhood. The neighborhood had made clear that they were comfortable with commercial development of this property. They did mention their concern about the fact that the proposed zoning bylaw was, in their opinion, misleading and could easily be interpreted to set precedent in other communities. And that those are just the facts as I remember them from municipal regulations. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Joe, could I add on to that just quickly?
Sure.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I'm certainly not trying to pile on to the property owner or his representative in this case. My reasoning for reaching out to Mr. Kelly and Mr. Waluka on 2 different occasions to try and act as a liaison is the overwhelmingly negative response that my office received in phone calls from abutters and 2 other people in town as a way to try and, as the planner, I'm not a resident of town. I don't have a vote at town meeting or on anything the planning board decides. So I figured the best thing I could do was act as a moderator or a liaison between the abutters and the property owner to get, a zoning proposal that would work for both parties. That's how I viewed my role in all of this. And, it was a little, even though I don't have, a vote or a say, and I'm not a resident, it was a little bit discouraging that was met with silence, because I would have been more than happy to bring the 2 sides together to do something that works. So to Mr. Kelly's point about proposing something that would work for the neighborhood, professionally, I haven't seen evidence that the property owner and his representative have made that effort in my time dealing with this project. I know there's a history here, and there's it goes back a ways, but in my time over the past several months dealing with this, I haven't seen an effort to work with the neighborhood. Like Mr. Zemanian said, there was contact individually to him following that meeting, but he didn't think it was appropriate to do that. I didn't think it was appropriate to do that. I made the offer that I could bring a group of residents together, representatives from the neighborhood. I thought that would be more appropriate, and that got no response. So that's all I was saying, is that, I was trying to kind of get something that would work so it wouldn't go to town meeting and potentially fail. That we could get something that would work for the town, the abutters, and everyone involved. So that was my only point. I'm not trying to pile on. I'm just laying out the process and what's happened, and I haven't seen that effort made.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. I just wanted to add some other points to this. Just again, for some background material, a similar proposal was made a year ago for a 5-acre minimum parcel, not 120,000 square feet, which is 2.75 acres. So town meeting rejected a 5-acre minimum for senior housing, and this one is 2.75. So if you remember, 70% of my comments were based on density. Now, I know Mr. Kelly has made a point of saying that the totality of the dimensional rules may not have permitted, but they specifically were looking for 155 units. And while they claim they couldn't put 155 on the premises given the dimensional rules, my big beef was the fact that it's 120,000 minimum acre size, meaning that they could put a senior housing project on 2.75 acres. The comment that I made at that point was, if my property, if that passed and it was available throughout the town, that I could put senior housing on my property. And I don't think that my neighbors would appreciate that. And I don't think that was the intention when everybody moved into the area, including myself. I wouldn't have expected a large commercial development like that to appear next door. Also, Mr. Charbonneau touched upon this briefly. There were several Scribner and structural and drafting errors with this bylaw. It's very bad precedent to accept something that's not really, I won't use the word correct, but has some flaws in it. First of all, he mentioned, and he's correct, that this is really a overlay district, which he did describe as a choice of either going with the overlay and its zoning or the underlying zoning district, which in this case is general business, as he described it as a have your cake and eat it too type of zoning. It belongs in Article 9. If you go home and look at your zoning bylaw, it is all our overlay districts are organized in Article 9. This nomenclature of 200-99 was in an old version of this bylaw that was repealed in 2015. It's very dangerous to start using references to a bylaw that's already been superseded by the document that we use today at the planning board as amended. So that's, I think that's, we had hoped, and it was my personal view, that enough people had reached out, there was enough conversation about the shortcomings of this bylaw to put the doubt in people's minds, to have the applicant come back to the table and ask for some more time and work with the town and the abutters to put forth something that worked for both parties.
Joe, I want to just piggyback on the point you just made about the formatting of the proposed article and the numbering of it. You're absolutely right. That's one thing I picked up on, and at one of the neighborhood meetings, I asked Mr. Waluka about that, and stated that any zoning bylaw that comes forward, usually to town meeting, it's usually very clear where in the zoning bylaws it will be inserted if approved. And his response at the public neighborhood meeting was, well, that's the planning board's job. And I told him that's absolutely not the planning board's job. That is the applicant's job to basically locate the appropriate place in the zoning bylaw for the zoning bylaw. So just to your point, Joe, you're absolutely right where, yes, we could speculate that it would belong in section 9, but that would be something that the applicant would have to present and decide.
And again, just to summarize, enough people made enough comments, enough detached professionals have made comments about this bylaw. I'm chagrined to find that the applicant has not attempted to pull this article and resubmit it in the fall with some changes. My personal recommendation is that we should reject this bylaw. The recommendation should be a negative recommendation to town meeting. And the floor is still open to members of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. This is not well put together at all, and I see it as trying to jam some cluster housing on one lot.
You're absolutely right. It has problems, and I think if it had been worked over a little better and a little tighter, and we looked at a much bigger minimum footprint for such a development, that it might have had a better chance of succeeding. Anybody else?
Yeah, just for clarification, it is a proposed bylaw. It's not a bylaw.
Well, correct. It only becomes a bylaw when town meeting approves it, Mr. Kaba.
Okay.
The first step is for this committee to opine on it, and our recommendation, along with the recommendation of the Municipal Reg Standing Committee, goes to the floor of town meeting, and town meeting takes both into consideration as well as testimony from the floor during the proceeding. So it has another crack at the bat, but after that, it can't come back to the public for vetting for 2 years. If we give a negative recommendation and town meeting gives a negative recommendation.
Now, there's still time, Mr. Chairman, and Sinese, between now and the town meeting, or even at the town meeting, it could be withdrawn on the floor. So it would have to actually get to the point of having a vote on the floor and rejected by that vote to eliminate it for 2 years. So there is still time for them to withdraw it if they choose to.
And Mr. Charbonneau has fully informed the applicant. They were well aware of their rights with respect to this. And as I said, I had hoped that prudence had kicked in and they took advantage of our offer.
Mr. Chair, my clarification was we've been calling it, a zoning law, a zoning bylaw, and I just wanted the recorder to know the clarification that it is called a proposed bylaw.
I would agree with you. Anything else?
Nope.
Can I have a motion from the floor as to what the pleasure of the board is?
I make a motion to reject the proposed bylaws.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Kelly?
I will vote to accept the, to go along with the vote of Mr. Kaba, only for the fact is that it is the neighborhood's desire for this not to be there, and also for a lot of the other legal points that have been brought up tonight, as far as some of the things that are going along. But I do believe this is a process and something that we do need in town. This just may not be the right format, but we just do need to get this type of senior housing in town. So
I think everybody agrees with you, Mr. Kelly, on that point.
Yeah, that's absolutely agreed, Dan. Yep.
Finishing the vote, Mr. Kaba?
Yes,
Yes, what?
I vote no.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that, sir. Mr. Demuse?
Affirmative to disapprove.
Thank you. Make it clear. And the chair votes not to approve. So I think that's, I don't think I left anybody out of that. So the recommendation, Mr. Charbonneau, to town meeting is that the planning board votes in.
Yeah, recommends unfavorable action, I believe it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Mr. Zamanian has raised a hand, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to entertain a question or comment from him.
Mr. Zamini, I don't know what you can add to the whole proceeding, but.
Actually, nothing. It has nothing to do with this. This is through you to Mr. Kelly and Mr. Kaba. I think the board as a whole, we all agree senior housing is necessary and very much needed in town. I want you to all be aware that the Stoughton Housing Assistance Subcommittee is actively working on an affordable housing trust. And that affordable housing trust will be, although it can't be specifically focused on seniors, we are definitely moving toward that. As was referenced earlier in the Central Business District addition for the 10% affordable housing that was added back to the core. We are very much as a town and our committees are very much aware of the need for senior housing, and we're actively attempting to do something about that. So please, take some hope in that, and by all means attend some of these subcommittee meetings so that your opinions can be recognized by that committee and acted upon furthermore. And I realize that was a little off topic, but also very much relevant to this discussion. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Zamin. And I will also remind the board that your chair is a member of that subcommittee.
And also, Joe, I would like to add that, as we've gone through the Stoughton Center District discussion and the bylaw development, and also the development of the Affordable Housing Trust, I've had conversations with Mrs. Zamanian and Joe. I've talked to you about this, where I honestly believe that one of the next priorities after the Stoughton Center District and the Campanelli zoning analysis will be to begin a discussion about a senior housing bylaw. I think that's something that's been on the town's mind for several years, and I think that's something that's going to have to become a priority here in the next year or so. Absolutely.
Thank you. With that, we move to, need a motion to open up the minutes of March
So
11th.
made.
Second, please.
Second,
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Roll call vote, Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kaba.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm taking my leave now.
Okay,
Thank you, Sinese. We appreciate it.
Mr. Kelly,
yes.
and the chair votes yes. You want to load those, John?
Yep. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there's page 1.
I think we're ready to go to page 2.
Yeah. Okay.
And the top of this is simply the legal ad that was read into the record by Joe.
Okay. Okay.
Just wait a minute, I want to catch the bottom. I haven't, hold on a second, could you,
You need me to go back up, Joe?
yeah, just a tad.
All right, hold on. We just add space here.
Okay,
And this is simply the new public hearing for Schuman Avenue and the legal ad.
well, wait a minute, John, can you go back to the beginning? There was something that I wanted, I just saw something that triggered, could you go back? Back to page 1? I'm sorry.
Oh, of the entire thing?
Yes.
Oh, you're killing me. No, just kidding.
Go
All
ahead.
right, yeah, Joe. What'd you catch?
Okay, go ahead. Go down a little bit. Okay, scroll down page 2. Stop right there. Okay, I'm sorry, that was very important that disclosure be in
Okay.
the minutes. I just want to apologize to everybody for going back to that point.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. John, where is the minutes that talked about the question of Mr. Fabiano?
What do you mean, Joe?
It's not in here about the situation with the sewer hookup and the why
I
would-
don't believe that came up at this meeting, Joe. This is March 11th.
Okay, that was the
So that
second-
was at the last meeting that came up on April 8th. So those minutes haven't come forward yet.
Okay, just okay. Wasn't-
Yeah, so those will be coming up in future minutes.
Okay. Looks pretty good, Karen. Okay.
Is everyone
Any-
all set?
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All set.
Great.
A motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
The second,
Second.
please. Thank you, Mr. Demuse. Roll call vote, Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Demuse.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Minutes are approved. Our next meeting will be
May
April
13th.
May
May
13th.
13th.
Time's flying.
Yes, we have. I know. We have 3 public hearings scheduled so far. We have the continued public hearings for 11 Evans, the solar and the solar canopies. We have 1580 Turnpike Street, and we have a new public hearing starting for Cape and Reynolds.
Okay,
So you gentlemen will be receiving that information before that meeting. We just get that filing in. It only took them about 6 months to complete that application after the first submission. So they finally completed it, and you'll be getting that information the week before the meeting.
thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. Anything else this evening?
Not that I can think of.
Anybody else? Hearing nothing. Motion to adjourn is in order.
So made.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Kelly, second, thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Demuse,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
chair votes yes. On behalf of the Stoughton Planning Board, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Too.